topic I really had, unless there's anything else you want to go over, was just favorite trades over these years. Was there any like trade deadline deals that you kind of look back on fondly that you know?
Several, but the one that really was like lightning in a bottle was the Doug Fister trade.
Oh yeah.
When Doug Fister came from Seattle, boy, very few Tiger fans had really heard of him. He had just pitched a nice game against the Tigers in Detroit for the Mariners a couple of weeks before the deadline, I believe. And I don't know how much that influenced Dave Dombrowski. But sure enough, then, as the deadline approached, boom, they made the move. They sent, I believe, 3 prospects, Chase Ruffin, whatever his name was. He was Bruce Ruffin's son. They sent a third base prospect who people sort of liked. And then Charlie Furbush, I believe, went over in that trade. And they didn't give up a lot, but you also didn't expect they were getting a lot because, again, nobody really knew much about Doug Fister. And what did he do? I mean, he came in and immediately kicked some ass. I mean, he was amazing down the stretch for a team that won the division, really propelled them to a division title. So that was a fantastic move. And I'll give you one that disappointed people, but I still will argue to this day was the right move. In 2009, the team was contending, but they needed help. They were down to 2 starting pitchers who were really viable, Verlander and Porcello. And they went out and got Jared Washburn from also the Mariners. And people were excited. And I believe he was leading the American League in ERA, or he was close. They had to have pitching. A lot of fans wanted them to get a hitter, but they needed a pitcher. I was convinced. And they went and got Washburn. And what happened is he hurt his knee almost immediately. I think he had one halfway decent start, and then he was garbage the rest of the year. It was horrible luck, but I will defend that trade forever, that it was the right move in the moment. They needed pitching very badly, and it showed down the stretch when Porcello and Verlander were pitching okay, but then they were giving starts to guys like Eddie Bonine and a bunch of other guys you've never heard of. So trying to limp their way into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, so we had a question. So the reliever that was traded with Doug Fister was David Pauly. I do have some memory of him.
He came to Detroit with him. Yeah.
Yes. So we traded Casper Wells. So I do remember Casper Wells. He was a right-handed hitter who had a little bit of power. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that Doug Fister trade. Doug Fister is one of my favorite Tigers players. I mean, what he did for them, I believe he had I don't know how I know this, but he had a 1.79 ERA in that 2011 season, and then obviously 2012 and 2013. Was really disappointed to see him traded in 2014. I thought he complemented like Verlander and Scherzer really well because you had the hard throwers and Scherzer and Verlander. Then you had Fister, who was kind of more of like a precise guy. I mean, he was really, really fun to watch and very, very underrated.
And very tall.
Yeah, and very tall as well.
I'll give you my 30-second story on him. I was having coffee in Minneapolis with Tom Gage. He used to write my name drop brag, right? With Tom Gage, used to write for the Detroit News. Wonderful man, salt of the earth person, love him. But anyway, we're sitting there having coffee in a Starbucks in the Tigers Hotel, and in walks Doug Fister the day after he had struck out 9 in a row against the Royals in Detroit. They made the overnight trip to Minnesota, and I was in town to watch from here in Iowa. So Tom Gage introduced me to Doug Fister. I'm 6'6", as I've told you in the past. I am, the tallest person in probably 95% of rooms I walk into. I legitimately looked up at Doug Fister. They listed him at 6'8". It wouldn't shock me if he was actually 6'9". That dude was tall. So that was a legit listing for him.
Yeah, I mean, this is becoming the Doug Fister appreciation show, but Doug Fister, 3 years with the Tigers, 3.29 ERA in 440 innings pitched. So, I mean, he was essential. I mean, he was almost a Cy Young level pitcher. I mean, that was a fantastic trade. I mean,
he was a quality arm, no doubt about it.
in the Dave Dombrowski era, I mean, I started watching in 2010, but I mean, you had the Johnny Peralta trade that worked out really well. He made multiple all-star teams with the Tigers. I don't even know what the Tigers gave up to get him, but
they gave up a relief pitcher, a lefty named Giovanni Soto.
Giovanni Soto,
and he not the Giovanni Soto who caught for the Cubs,
yeah.
a different Giovanni Soto, spelled it differently. He was actually a guy who had a decent year for the Tigers, and I was like a little surprised they gave him up. And he might have had a cup of coffee with the Cleveland at the time, but never amounted to much. It was a great trade. I mean, Johnny Peralta did the job.
Yes, and then you had the Anibal Sanchez and Omar Infante trade, which I know the Tigers gave up Jacob Turner. I mean, Sanchez, another guy. I mean, it didn't really work out towards the end of his Tigers tenure, unfortunately, when he got the extension, but won the ERA title in 2013, was really good in 2012 and 2014. And Infante was a very good second baseman on a team that made it to the World Series. Yeah, I mean, you obviously have a lot of Al Avila trades that probably didn't work out too well. You did have the 2015 deadline, the David Price and Yoenis Cespedes deal. I think that worked out fairly well for the Tigers, getting Michael Fulmer, who won Rookie of the Year, Matt Boyd, who this was a fun fact. I was looking this up because in my free time I just look at baseball stats because I guess I'm a nerd like that. But Matthew Boyd actually has the 22nd most strikeouts in Detroit Tigers history. Was very surprised to find that out, but he did have 238 strikeouts in 2019. Yeah. So Matt Boyd, 22nd in Detroit Tigers history in strikeouts.
First in our hearts.
Yes, but you got him. You got Daniel Norris. You also got, I believe, another left-handed pitcher, Jario Lambert, I think it was how you pronounced it, for David Price. So I don't think those trades weren't necessarily bad.
Jairo Lambert.
Okay.
Labort. That's what it was. Jairo Labort.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah, I mean, in terms of like the Al Avila era, a lot of it's a blur. I mean, the Castellanos trade, obviously, bad trade.
The thing about it, when you have so many losses piling up year after year after year, so many of the losses just become so non-memorable. I mean, that's the thing from the 2013 Tigers or the 2012 Tigers. I mean, those teams, those had even the 2009 Tigers who lost in game 163 because they were good and competitive. They had a lot of hard losses that just ripped your guts out as a fan, right? I mean, those things, you remember that stuff. Whereas these teams that we've had the last few years, loss number 79 wasn't a whole hell of a lot different than loss number 94, so the years just kind of run together when they're losing this badly.
Yeah, I mean, Tiger Town said the JD Martinez trade, but we were trying to stay on like good trades. So
yes, I know I brought up a bad trade earlier, but yes, good trades. Let's dwell on the positive.